Grandma must have informed me about the special knock when I was approximately 7 years old. At the time, I was curled up in bed in my small room at the back of my parents' first home. I had Grandma sitting at my feet. I had been in tears. I don't know what triggered me, but I recall my nose running and my eyes going blurry. I recall repeatedly stroking a cut on my lip with my tongue to probe it. Grandma's frown is still in my memory, a half-concern, half-something-else look. She got out of bed and left the room after getting me a tissue and wiping my face. Went to the cabinet across the room from me. I have vivid memories of that cupboard. I had a lot of sleepless nights because of that cupboard. Before we moved to our second house. Lots of nightmares. I used to have a lot of different ideas about it. I had to constantly verify that the cupboard door was still closed while I lay awake, sometimes for hours at a time, to ensure that it was securely closed. You see, I used to think the cabinet door was the source of any creaks I heard in the home when I was asleep. That, as I was sleeping, someone on the other side was attempting very gently to open it so it could come and get me. I had never discussed my anxiety with anyone. I knew it was dumb, even at 7 years old. Baby items. Even yet, I could feel my tension rising as I saw my grandmother pause in front of the cabinet and rest her wrinkly cheek against the wood. Despite the fact that the lights were on, despite the fact that I was in the room with an adult, and I had to suppress the temptation to yell for my parents as Grandma closed her eyes and began to whisper, "Grandma?" My voice was unsure, and I could hear it. "Grandma, what are you doing?" She remained silent for a few more seconds. She simply continued mumbling while keeping her eyes closed. Then, suddenly, she looked back at me, grinned. I knew it was tail time when she returned and took up her customary spot at the foot of my bed. "Did I ever tell you about the special knock, sweetheart?" I gave a headshake. "No? Well, perhaps I was holding off till you were a little older. In addition to being amazing and allowing you to see things you couldn't ever imagine in your dreams, the unique knock may also be, well, deadly." Grandma looked from me to the door of the bedroom. "In fact, perhaps it's one for another time. I don't want to frighten you, and I really should be heading home to see your grandfather." I stopped her before she could get out of bed. "No, don't go, Grandma. What is the unique knock?" Grandma had a glint in her blue eyes. After a little moment of hovering, she sat down again. "The special knock is an old trick a friend of mine taught me when I was younger," she said. "Not everyone would want to do it, and not everyone is capable of doing it. You must be courageous, cautious, and, well, unique." Grandma gave me a smile. "Like you." While I was observing her, she extracted 2 cooked candies from the front pocket of her cardigan, gave me one. I knew my mother would kill me if she discovered me eating candy right before bed, so I had already washed my teeth. However, I had some alone time with my grandmother. Dad and Mom were downstairs. She would never be aware. My tongue washed with the sticky mint as I opened the candy and put it in my mouth. My lip cut hurt a little, but I chose to ignore it. Grandma had lowered her voice when she spoke again. "I was speaking the magic words just now when I was near the door of your cabinet. Only a select handful are aware of these secret words. Are you aware of what such words accomplish?" I gave a head shake. A door is transformed into a window by them, a portal of sorts. This house where you reside, the building where you attend school, and the town you visit with your mother on the weekends aren't the only places you spend your days, my dear. There are additional locations as well. And now that I've said the magic words on your cupboard door, you'll see them if you use the special knock. You will have the opportunity to visit those more locations. I focused on what Grandma was saying while I looked at her, absorbing them. My mouth was filled with mint, yet I neglected to swallow. "Now listen to me very carefully," Grandma went on, "because here is the crucial portion. You must do the unique knock correctly in order to open the window. You will want to knock on the door 7 times. Having done this, you will inherit the power to see things at the time they really happen. There are 7 knocks, neither more nor less. After that, you open it." Okay, so you won't be able to pass through, but you'll have an amazing view. I took a swallow. A view of what? I honestly don't think I could adequately describe it, darling, but I could try. You really must witness it for yourself. I'll just state that it's the most exquisite thing I've ever laid eyes on, and believe me, I've witnessed a lot. Grandma reached into the duvet and grabbed the candy wrappers, returned them to her pocket. As though about to stand, she placed her hands on her legs. Then she stopped. "How many knocks did I say?" said Grandma. "You're correct, 7. Also, don't forget it. If you unlock the door after receiving the incorrect number," she scowled as she looked across to the cupboard. "Well, just make sure you don't get the wrong number, okay?" "Okay, Grandma. And will you make me a promise?" "What?" "No matter what you do, don't open the door if you knock the wrong number of times, particularly if it equals 13 or anything similar. All right? Regardless of what you hear on the other side, do not open it. Opening a gateway to the Blacklands is the last thing you want to do." My back was touched by cold fingers. In the darkness, at the far end of my bedroom, I looked across at the closed cupboard door. "What's the Blacklands?" Grandma got up and came toward me, leaned forward and kissed me. Whispering, "You don't want to know," she said. I avoided the cupboard for the next week. I didn't approach it at all. Avoided even glancing in that direction. I made every effort to put Grandma's narrative as far from my thoughts as possible. It wasn't simple. I would sense it whenever I was by myself in my room and the house was quiet, something like a pull. For example, when someone instructs you not to look at something, all you want to do is glance at it. Although the sensation was somewhat similar, it was also distinct, more powerful. The cabinet would occasionally feel like a mental burden to me while I was asleep in bed. Static energy, hefty. I felt agitated and wanted to clench my fists and grit my teeth. My skin itched as I looked away from the cupboard, as if there were microscopic, imperceptible insects within the pores. I had trouble falling asleep because of that. I also experienced dreams when I slept. There were times when the dreams were nice and floaty. In my dreams, I would be floating through multicolored realms of light while perched atop a cloud, flying through a sea of stars that never ends. I would wake up from these dreams with a sense of security and happiness, similar to how I felt when my mother caressed my hair and gave me a hug. At other times, though, I experienced nightmares. The worst nightmares I have ever experienced in my life occurred during that week. Blurs, awful, half-glimpsed. Picture myself waking up with a scream stuck in my throat and my sweat-drenched pajamas clinging to my back. I didn't recall the actual nightmares at the time, not quite, anyway. However, I always woke up from one with the same fading image. A picture of me in the middle of dense, stifling darkness. There were thick shadows everywhere. Even though I couldn't see much, I felt as though I was in the middle of a huge open area. Around me, the wind howled. There were echoes. I wanted to scream for assistance, but I was unable to do so since I was aware that I wasn't alone. I scurried off. I would have yelled if my throat hadn't constricted. Thomas hurriedly dropped the sheet, grabbed me by the shoulder, and pushed me along the hallway. The boy was crying once more as the armoire behind us shook from side to side, his hinges screeching. His voice sounded nearly hysterical now. Returning to the security of his chamber, Thomas listened to the door until the armoire was silent. He remarked, "We are fortunate that Father didn't hear. We are sleeping now. According to Father, we must wake up before he starts the morning ritual." He ushered me into bed and fell asleep immediately, so he must not have been at all alarmed by what we saw. However, my body continued to tremble. That object in the mirror? What was it? Did they exist in greater numbers? Did they hang sheets everywhere for that reason? But why even maintain a mirror? There was no doubt in my mind that I could not stay overnight at that house. However, Thomas's father would not allow me leave. I had to leave that place as quickly as possible. I threw my legs onto the floor and tiptoed out of the room, up the stairs as soon as Thomas's breathing settled into a cadence. However, as I got closer to the top, I heard footsteps clomping along. Behind the closest door, I hid. I saw Mr. Donovan walk by, through the small opening, a rectangular object tucked under his arm, in the car area. A tinkling noise came from under the sheet. Grunting all the way, he brought it to Thomas's room and vanished through the door. My throat lurched with my stomach. I was not interested in learning what he had in store. Silently and gently, I flew down the stairs. I held my hand up to the wall for direction. The front door was locked. I hoped my bike was still in the garage. But how did I get from the landing to the garage? "He's gone!" was yelled angrily above my head. There is no time for plans. I flew from room to room as I ran around the ground floor. Everybody let out a cry, and now the items under the blankets bounced and danced on the walls. The wailing infant now sounded frightened, as if they were in agony. An other door led to a small utility area beyond the kitchen. As I rushed past it and into the garage, the temperature fell. On the interior wall was the light switch. A naked bulb flickered on after I flicked it. There were crates of old newspapers, stepladders, and auto parts strewn all over the place. And more sheets, each fluttering and twisting, were flung over various mirrors. For a moment, I was terrified to move, because there were more cries, not just from the boy. Then, however, a door slammed behind me and I fled. With its handlebar obstinately entangled with a Christmas tree, my bike was leaning against the wall next to the exit. It was like turning on a Rube Goldberg contraption when it finally came loose after several tugs. A bag of marbles spilled over the floor after a bucket and mop toppled into a stepladder, which then clattered to the ground. I grasped the handles of the bike. It was an old-fashioned fold-up door, which you had to twist the handle to open. I had to put the bike down and concentrate only on this work because my hands were shaking so much. The door turned upward. When Thomas's father rushed into the room behind me, he stopped grinning for the first time. He hurried behind me, but found it difficult to navigate the clutter. When I started jogging, the sheet that had twisted my bike's back tire came loose, like a magician tearing off a tablecloth. I heard the mirror break as it fell to the ground. I heard laughter, and, as I looked back over my shoulder, I saw that my slender arms were extending out of the glass in Mr. Donovan's direction. Mr. Donovan yelled when the garage light flickered quickly on and off. The dread in that scream is something I will always remember as long as I live. I was driven out of there by pure adrenaline. I ran to the top of the driveway, jumped on the bike, and shot down the hill without slowing. Screams came from farther within the house behind me. I didn't pause to glance back. Mom didn't like that I rode my bike home so late, but she accepted it after I made up a story about Thomas's family falling sick and having to leave quickly. She would never trust my story, I knew. I was really nervous about seeing Thomas again, so I tried pretending to be sick to get out of school, but she wouldn't have it. I wondered what I had seen all day Saturday and Sunday. My cubicle companion didn't say a word. While sitting on Monday, we didn't speak again, and we never once bumped elbows. Innocently enough, they began, "Remember to bring your keys." Read the first message, which was written in loopy letters on a sticky note. It was on the door of my refrigerator. I didn't remember writing it at the time I lived alone, and the handwriting didn't resemble mine or anyone I knew, so it caught my attention right away. I was a little upset, but I wasn't sure how to respond. Ultimately, I simply threw away the memo and started working. A few days later, I received the second note, which was placed on my kitchen counter. The next morning, I was there and I read the note. And after I finished reading it, I felt a little better about it. This time, the sticky note had the same characteristic looping handwriting, but it was pink. "Remember to bring a lunch for today." I was uneasy once more. Any regular person could have called the police to report this, but I was going through a serious depressive episode at the time. In addition to starting a new job that I soon discovered I detested and didn't pay nearly enough, I had relocated to a new city far from my friends and family. Work was soul-crushing, and home was lonely. I already struggled to get out of bed every morning, so I'm sure the cops wouldn't take my report seriously. I crumpled up the note, feeling even more anxious. But in the end, I packed a little lunch for myself. Contrary to my better judgment, I followed the note's instructions even though I usually didn't bother to make the effort and just ate cafeteria cuisine. The cafeteria was closed that day. Overnight, the main cafeteria refrigerator broke, causing many of the frozen lunches to spoil. The management decided it would be best to close it for the day. There was a knot in my gut as I heard the news. The notes seemed to have foreseen it. Over the next few weeks, the notes persisted. Usually they would appear at random times, with no more than 3 notes every day. They were all in that strange, loopy handwriting, all on sticky notes, all left in plain sight in my flat. Their prophetic ability started to increase. Today, take I-80. On your way home, there will be a serious accident. At the office, Janet will offer you some cookies. Refuse politely. You'll get food sickness from them. Marie's diet has been in place. Congratulate her for losing weight. She'll think kindly of you in the end. Naturally, I checked the notes to make sure they were correct. Every time I disregarded their advice, the things they cautioned against materialized. I deliberately didn't pack an umbrella when I was told to do so one day. Any regular person wouldn't think to pack one because it was supposed to be sunny that day. But I ended up getting soaked that evening while heading to my car. The notes piqued my intense interest. I had a lot of questions about them, and those questions continued to fester inside of me. I attempted to leave them out and write letters back, but I never received a response. Talking aloud and asking questions as though, or in case the note writer might hear me, simply made me feel stupid. Sometimes at strange hours, I would unexpectedly go home to see if I could catch the note writer leaving their notes. I never captured them, of course. The following day, I discovered that every single camera's internal components had been totally ripped out and left on the kitchen table, with a single note that read, "Never do that again." I had attempted to install cameras throughout my apartment, even making sure they were all perfectly hidden. After then, the notes stopped coming, which I regret greatly. The notes had become familiar to me. I had even started to depend on them. Over the past few months, they have greatly enhanced my social, economical, and emotional well-being. Because of their guidance, I had actually begun to make friends at work and was somewhat popular for the first time in my life. My managers, who had not given me much attention prior to the notes, suddenly appreciated my presence and frequently sought my input on initiatives. There was no doubt that I was headed for a promotion. Without the notes, could I still accomplish that? As strange as it sounds, I also regarded the notes as a friend, perhaps more akin to an angel of protection. They were always watching out for me, no matter where they came from. The future was suddenly uncertain and perilous without them. I considered how all of this might have been prevented if I still had the notes, whenever a small irritation arose from that moment, such as poor traffic, demanding work environments, or even a small paper cut. A bright green sticky note showed up on my bathroom mirror the next week. Remember to give Mom a call today. Her birthday is today. I almost burst into tears. I made the decision to abandon my investigation and accept the situation as it was. I felt like I was slowly getting back to my former self, as the haze of my depressive spell started to clear. For the first time in a long time, I felt in balance with my life, and my confidence increased. I went out, made jokes, and even got my place cleaned. In some way, I also got a girlfriend. Amanda was her name. I was out with my friends when I met her at a pub. The nicest thing about it all is that she seemed to genuinely like me for some reason. She was stunning, far beyond my capabilities, with lovely brown eyes and long auburn hair that fell to her back. She liked to wear perfume with a lemon aroma, and her laugh was sweet. She was the kind of girl you could talk to for hours on end and never get bored. I was trying not to imagine our entire future together because we were still dating, but it was difficult to resist because she was so endearing. I considered telling her about the notes for a moment, but I haven't really had somebody to do so yet. But I chose not to because I was worried she would think I was insane. I had spent the last few years focusing diligently on grades, but I chose not to because I was worried she would think I was insane. Making her believe I was crazy at this early stage of our relationship was pointless. In addition, I was worried that the notes might stop once more. How would they respond if I told someone what was going on, if the person who was leaving them obviously didn't want me to investigate? I therefore kept it to myself for the time being. Cooking was one of Amanda's hobbies, and she had invited me over on Saturday for what she described as the best fucking spaghetti you'll ever eat. This was the first time I would actually go to her house, so I was really excited. As I prepared for the date that evening, I was feeling upbeat. I went downstairs to get my keys after humming to myself how beautiful this was going to be. There was a fresh, hot, pink sticky note on the kitchen counter. I grabbed it out of impulse. Assassinate your girlfriend. There was a pause in my thoughts. The phrases flashed through my mind as I read it once, again, and a third time, but each time I hit an error. I put down the note and swallowed, feeling sick. I walked anxiously to my car and got behind the wheel. I made an effort to ignore the note, but the words kept coming back to me. Murder your girlfriend. As far as I knew, which was admittedly not much, the notes were always in my best interest and have never let me down. Perhaps this time they were mistaken. It might not have been intended to be taken literally. It's possible that kill and break up are interchangeable terms. All the way there, my mind was constantly attempting to come up with pathetic excuses. I was a sweating mess, and not at all calmer when I got there. The bright green sticky note fluttered out as I lowered my sun visor to examine my face. I became icy. I had never seen the notes outside my house before. I picked up the note with trembling hands and read it. Assassinate Amanda. Shoot her with the gun from your glove box. To be safe, I did in fact keep a pistol in my glove box. I wanted to throw up, to think that this was not real. I tried to get the note out of my head and ignored it once again before approaching Amanda's residence. I rang the doorbell, and she answered the door very instantly. Hey, how are you? She spoke with a broad smile, but it vanished as she noticed my face. What's wrong, Gary? Are you okay? With concern, she said, Nothing. I tried to fake a smile as I lied. Well, I believe I have a slight stomachache right now. She ushered me in and urged, Come in, come in. Her home was charming and cozy, and as she escorted me to her kitchen table, she worriedly concerned about me. Then she took my hand and gave it a reassuring rub. We can always have spaghetti at a later time if you're not feeling up to it. Don't stress over it. Would you like any antacids or anything else? I grinned. I fell in love with her again because of how worried she was about me over a minor stomach pain. My heart ached from remorse and love. Even though she claimed everything was great, I felt it would be a shame for her to pack away all that spaghetti after only making it because of how strongly it smelled of cooked spaghetti. I'm all right, sweetie. I probably have a tummy pain because I haven't eaten much today. I was really anticipating your spaghetti. She smiled once more. She always had such a quick smile, and I liked it. All right, let me get you a bowl, Mr. Hungry. She went to the kitchen. I put my hands in my pockets, groaned, and leaned back. A paper crinkled in my hand. Shit. I reached into my right pocket and took out the paper, bashed her head with it. As I tucked the note back in my right pocket, Aini found it difficult to control my breathing. Additionally, I felt paper in my left pocket. Despite my brain telling me not to, I took it out and discovered it was actually 2 notes that had crinked together. But as I unwrinkled the first note shakily, Dad, is that Gary? Behind me, I asked Amanda. I'm not sure, she replied. I'm a little bashful, but I promise I will learn to eat with safety nets. Is that Gary? Behind me, I asked Amanda. I practically leapt out of my skin. I put the notes back in my pocket on the left. Oh, it's just a work note that I forgot I had in my pocket. In a strange voice, I said, Yagimila. She scowled, as if she was about to say something, then changed her mind. Gently, she handed me a dish of spaghetti and said, Here, babe. It had a divine appearance. I felt like throwing up. She had her own dish and sat next to me. She stared at me expectantly and excitedly while resting her head on her hands. I gave her a blank stare. "Well, you idiot, take a bite." She pointed to my bowl as she spoke. "I'm so sorry," I said. "I truly must use your restroom." I leapt to my feet and headed for her restroom. She looked perplexed as she leapt to her feet after me. "Gary, what's the matter? You've been behaving strangely." After locating the correct door, I entered and secured it. She continued to rap on the door. "Gary? Gary, what's wrong with you really? How severe is the stomachache? Gary, please talk to me." I sank to the floor after backing up against the restroom wall. I took the 2 notes out of my left pocket once more and read the second one. My heart fell. "You have been blocking extrication clinics since I've been here.